I can't let you do that, she whispered, her voice sharp and low, her hand tightening on his wrist just as he reached for the bottle of wine. It was her office, her territory, her rules. But here he was, 22, cocky, smiling like he didn't care about boundaries or HR policies. The door was locked, the blinds drawn. The air smelled like sandalwood and old books. He looked down at her hand on his skin, then up into her eyes. You already did, he said, almost a dare. For a moment, time paused in the stale hush of the room. Her grip loosened, and she looked away too quickly, as if eye contact had become dangerous. Maybe it had. The bottle clinked softly as he poured the red wine into two mismatched mugs, one with fading Harry Potter art, the other chipped at the rim. She didn't even remember keeping mugs in her office. He must have found them in some forgotten drawer. You really shouldn't be here after hours, she said. And yet, he replied, handing her the chipped mug, here we are. She hesitated. It wasn't just that he was young. It was that he didn't flinch in the face of power, not hers, not anyone's. That was the danger. That's what made her chest tighten. She took the mug. He leaned against the edge of her desk and sipped his drink like he owned the room. That same worn leather jacket he always wore, even in the late summer heat, smelled like motor oil and something burned, like cigarettes. Maybe, though he never actually smoked around her. His jeans were torn at the knee. The inside of her wrist itched just looking at him. You don't even work here, she muttered, half laughing. I'm freelancing, he grinned. Technically, you're 22. He tilted his head, amused. You Googled me. She looked away again. Stupid. Amateur move. She was 41, not some starstruck intern. She'd led teams, negotiated million-dollar contracts, raised 2 daughters, and rebuilt her life twice over. She did not Google men, especially not interns who freelanced part-time editing copy and had a jawline that looked airbrushed. You're arrogant, she said. I'm observant, he corrected. Still arrogant. They sipped in silence for a beat. Outside, the city hummed. Car horns, distant laughter, a bus hissing to a stop. Inside, the lights were low. Her office smelled like stories she'd buried under deadlines. You're married, he said quietly. No, she said. I was. He studied her. That why you don't smile much? She blinked. Sorry, he said quickly, looking away for the first time. That was a shitty thing to say. No, her voice was soft. It wasn't. A long pause stretched out between them like a wire pulled too tight. The wine was already warm. Her hand ached where it gripped the mug. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. I haven't smiled because I haven't wanted to. She didn't know why she said that. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the fact that she hadn't had a real conversation in weeks, maybe months. Maybe it was the way he looked at her like she was still a person and not someone's ex-wife, or someone's mother, or someone's boss. He didn't say anything, just nodded, sat with it. Then, carefully, he reached out, not touching her, just hovering, his fingers near hers on the desk. She should have pulled away. Instead, she turned her hand over. Their fingers touched. A whisper of a gesture, but it cracked something open. She hadn't felt a man's hand in over 3 years. He let go just as gently as he'd initiated the touch. No pressure, no move, just the possibility of one. Her chest fluttered in a way she didn't know she remembered how to feel. I should go, he said, standing. She didn't say anything. He was almost to the door when she spoke. Why did you come back tonight? He paused, looked over his shoulder. Because you looked sad when you thought no one was watching. That did it. That stupid line. That terrible, sweet, ridiculous line. She laughed, the kind of laugh that caught her off guard. It wasn't graceful or polite. It cracked out of her like it had been locked in a closet for years and finally found the door. He looked stunned. Then he smiled too. Good night, he said, softer now. She nodded, and long after the door closed behind him, she sat at her desk, wine in hand, staring at the chipped rim of a mug she didn't remember owning, and smiling like someone had just pressed play on her life again. The first time someone noticed, it was stupid. Small. But stupid is what ruins people. They were in the elevator, alone, her pretending to check emails, him with a coffee in each hand, one with oat milk just the way she liked it. The numbers lit up too slowly. And then the doors slid open on the 7th floor, and her assistant, Marla, sharp-eyed and passive-aggressive in that young and ambitious way, stepped in, immediately clocking the 2 coffees and the quiet space between them. Morning, Marla said, giving them both the same smile, but only meeting his eyes for a second too long. He didn't react, but she did. Her stomach tensed. One too long silence, one glance, and that's how rumors started. When the doors opened, Marla let them exit first. Behind them, she said, just loud enough to be heard, "Cute coffee date." No one laughed. But the pause after? That was worse. They didn't talk again for a week. Not in person. Not where anyone could see. But late at night, her phone buzzed. "You okay?" She stared at the message for 5 minutes before replying. "It's not safe." She noticed. "So, you don't get it. People talk. I have a reputation. I'm not trying to ruin your reputation." "No, you're not trying at all." That shut it down. Nothing for hours. Then one last reply. "I was just trying to bring you coffee." The next morning, she walked into her office and found a paper cup on her desk. No note. Just the same oat milk, lukewarm now, and the same ache in her chest. She stared at the door for a long time. That Friday, she saw him across the room during a strategy meeting. He wasn't in the meeting. He was at a desk near the glass wall, headphones in, head down, pretending not to be watching her. But he was. She knew because when she looked up during a budget dispute, he blinked once, slowly, and then looked away. The next day she called in sick. Not because she was. Just because she couldn't face the second glances. Her daughter came over that afternoon, the younger one, Emily, 20, with a bright voice and complicated eyes. They sat at the kitchen table eating microwave lasagna and pretending everything was fine. "You seem different," Emily said between bites. "Different how?" "I don't know. Less tired." She didn't answer. Emily narrowed her eyes. "Are you seeing someone?" She almost dropped her fork. "No. Why would you say that? You're wearing lipstick." "I always wear lipstick." "No, you don't." She pushed her plate away and stood up too quickly. "I'm not seeing anyone. I'm working. That's all I do." Emily stared at her for a beat, something unreadable flickering in her expression. Then she shrugged. "Okay." That night, the silence in her apartment was unbearable. She turned on the TV, then turned it off again. Finally, she sent him a message. "Come over." There was no response for 10 minutes. She thought maybe she'd gone too far. But then, "You sure?" She wasn't. But she replied, "Yes." He showed up in a hoodie and jeans, hands shoved in his pockets, nervous. She hadn't seen him nervous before. It made him look younger, like a student again. She opened the door and stepped aside. Neither of them said anything until he was halfway through the living room. "You didn't have to come," she said, folding her arms. "You told me to." "Not the same thing." He turned and looked at her. Really looked. "You're scared. I have a life. I have a job. I have kids who are practically your age. You think I don't know that? Do you care?" "Yeah," he said. "I do." There was a pause. A long, pulsing quiet that stretched between them like static. "I'm not embarrassed of you," she said finally. "I'm embarrassed of myself." "Why?" "Because people will think I'm pathetic." "Is that what you think?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "I think you're the most put-together person I've ever met," he said low. "And I think every time you walk into a room, people pay attention because you don't have to yell to be heard. And I think you've been holding your breath for so long, you forgot what it's like to be seen." That was the moment. Not the kiss that came after. Not the hours that followed. Not the way she gripped the back of his neck like she might fall off the earth. The moment was the second she realized he meant every word. And worse, that she wanted to believe him. Afterward, when they lay on the couch, limbs tangled and clothes half on, she whispered, "We're going to get caught." "I know," he said. "I'll lose everything. Then tell me to stop." She didn't. Sunday morning, she checked her email before even getting out of bed. There was a message. Anonymous sender. One sentence. "How long have you been fucking the intern?" No signature. No threat. Just that. She stared at it for a long time. Her heart was too loud. Her chest too tight. That night, she didn't text him back. She didn't go to work Monday. Or Tuesday. Wednesday, she finally returned. Marla looked at her like she already knew. Everyone did. And then her office phone rang. The voice on the other end was low, careful. "I know about you and the boy." She didn't recognize the voice. "I haven't told anyone. Yet. But you're going to want to hear what I found." Then the line went dead. She sat back in her chair, dizzy, wine-red nails pressing against her temples. Everything was unraveling faster than she'd prepared for. And all she could think was, what the hell have I done? The first time she let him sleep over, it wasn't planned. He showed up after midnight, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, and when she opened the door, she didn't even ask why he was there. He didn't try to touch her, just walked in, quiet, and sat on the edge of her bed like he'd done it 100 times. She asked if he wanted anything, water, tea, a reason to leave, but he shook his head and said nothing. She turned off the lights and got into bed without changing. When she woke, he was still there, sitting in the same spot, staring at the floor, and whatever had brought him over was still heavy on his back. He finally spoke around 6 a.m. My dad called. He wants to meet. Haven't talked to him in 5 years. She didn't ask why. She just reached over and touched his arm, and he leaned into it like he'd needed it all night. After that, there were more nights. More silence. More words they didn't share because the words would have made it real. He'd bring food sometimes, sit on her kitchen counter while she poured wine, and try to talk about anything else. Her boss's latest tantrum, the quarterly numbers, the new assistant who wore sunglasses indoors, but everything circled back to them. Not directly, not openly, but in how long they stayed in the same room after the food was gone, and how she started leaving her door unlocked after 10, and how he stopped pretending not to notice the way her hand lingered on his shoulder just a second too long when they said goodbye. One night, as he traced her spine with his fingers, he said, "We should go somewhere. Like a trip? Just for a weekend. Somewhere no one knows us." She turned to face him. "That won't fix this. I know. I just want to be around you without feeling like we're doing something wrong." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But 3 days later, they were driving 2 hours out of the city to a small cabin he found on an app. 1 bedroom. No neighbors. No internet. They didn't bring laptops. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. The cabin was old, with uneven floors and chipped cabinets, but it had a working heater and clean sheets, and for 2 nights, they didn't talk about the office or her daughters or the email that still sat unread in her inbox. They cooked badly, drank too much, argued about nothing, laughed too loud. It was the only time in months she didn't wake up afraid. But reality doesn't wait forever. They returned Sunday night, and she knew something was wrong the moment she stepped into her apartment. Her daughter, the older one, Lauren, was sitting at the kitchen table, phone in hand, face unreadable. 24, law school, always saw through everything. "Where were you?" Lauren asked without standing. "I had meetings," she said too quickly. Lauren turned the phone screen toward her. It was a photo, blurry, zoomed in. Her and him, at the gas station, laughing, his hand resting on her waist. Her head tilted toward him. Her breath caught. She said nothing. Lauren didn't move. "Who is he?" "I don't owe you that answer." Lauren's face hardened. "He's younger than me. Don't do this. You lied. You said you were alone. You made it sound like you were rebuilding." "I was. This isn't rebuilding. This is..." She stopped, clenched her jaw, stood. "This is selfish. You don't get to decide what that means for me. You're risking everything for what? A distraction? Don't reduce him like that." Lauren picked up her bag. "I won't tell Emily. Yet. Don't threaten me. I'm trying to protect you." She wanted to say thank you. She wanted to scream. She said nothing. The next morning, she got to the office before anyone else. The elevator lights hadn't even turned on. She opened her door and found a manila envelope sitting on her desk, unmarked. Inside, photos. Printed. Real. Her and him. In the cabin. On the street. Outside her apartment. No note. No name. Just evidence. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She sat down, poured herself coffee, and stared at the photos one by one. They weren't graphic. Just honest. 2 people standing too close. Laughing too easily. Smiling like they didn't have jobs, or reputations, or daughters with law degrees. Then she checked her phone. "We need to talk. I think someone followed me last night. I didn't tell anyone, I swear. Should I come over?" She didn't reply. Later that day, she saw him in the hallway near the elevators. She was coming out of a client meeting, still holding her notes. He looked at her like she was already halfway gone. "I'm sorry," he said low, fast. "I think it's my dad. He found out. He's pissed. He sent the photos." She blinked. "How?" "He has access. He knows people. He's been tracking me. And you didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't know until this morning." She stepped back. "So now what?" He didn't answer. Just stood there, helpless. She could feel eyes on them from the glass-walled office to their left. "Don't talk to me at work again," she said, her voice flat. "Ever." He opened his mouth. Closed it. Not at once. She walked away without looking back. That night, She sat alone in the dark, no TV, no music, just the photos on her desk and a silence that felt like it was growing legs. Her phone lit up. They're going to ruin you. Then another. I'll take the blame. Just say I lied. That I made it up. You don't have to go down for this. And one more. Tell me what to do. She stared at the screen, heart hammering, throat dry. She typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Stopped. Finally, she turned off the phone and sat there, still, her hands on the table, the weight of what they'd built pressing down on her so hard she couldn't breathe. He wasn't supposed to show up. That was the one thing she made clear in the message she didn't send, the one she rehearsed in her head over and over without writing. But he showed up anyway. She saw him before he saw her, standing near the back of the room at the quarterly company reception, just inside the entrance, alone, not dressed for the occasion, looking like someone who didn't belong and didn't care. The room was packed. Half the firm's clients were there, drinks in hand, suits too tight, conversations full of careful smiles. She looked away fast, moved toward the finance team, started talking to a woman she barely knew about risk assessments just to fill the space. He stayed near the wall. She could feel his eyes across the room. Every step she took felt watched. Her boss, David, made a joke about the new interns being unusually well-connected this year, and someone laughed too loud. Marla was nearby, clutching a glass of white wine and watching the room like a hawk. No one said anything, but she knew. The air felt charged. Then, without warning, he moved. He walked straight through the crowd, past the HR table, past the VP of strategy, right to her. No hesitation. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice louder than it should have been. Not here, she said through clenched teeth, barely turning her head. I can't do this anymore. Her chest tightened. People were staring now. Someone behind her cleared their throat. Lower your voice. You told me to let it go, he said, not even trying to hide the anger in his face. But you didn't mean it. You're just scared. She turned sharply toward him, eyes narrowed. I said not here. But he didn't move. And now Marla was walking over. You're making a mistake, he said quietly, but still loud enough for the woman beside her to hear. Pretending nothing happened doesn't make it true. Marla's voice cut in like a blade. Is everything all right? We're fine, she said quickly, forcing a smile. Just a disagreement on a draft. He laughed, bitter and low. Yeah, a disagreement. And then, without waiting for permission, he walked out. Just left. The room buzzed back to life behind him, but a few conversations stalled too long. She looked around and knew. They weren't speculating anymore. They were confirming. She left the party early. No excuse, just a vague smile and a wave to someone in logistics. Her hands were cold the entire drive home. She locked her door behind her, then locked it again. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like a stage she wasn't ready to walk onto. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. Lauren. She ignored it. 2 minutes after that, it rang again. This time it was Emily. She picked up. Did you really sleep with him? The voice was quiet but hard. Not shocked. Just tired. She didn't answer. Someone sent Lauren a video. From tonight. We saw everything. She sat down on the couch, barely breathing. Emily exhaled. You could have told us. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because I knew how you'd react. So you thought hiding it was better? I thought protecting you was better. That's not what this was. What does that mean? It means this wasn't about protecting anyone. You didn't even protect yourself. The call ended before she could say anything else. She dropped the phone on the floor and didn't move. An hour later, a knock came at the door. No message, no buzz from the front gate. Just 3 soft knocks. She didn't want to open it. She opened it anyway. He was there, still wearing the same clothes. Still angry. Did you come here to finish ruining it? No, he said. I came here because you didn't. Didn't what? Tell them it was real. She didn't answer. Just stood there, the door half open, her hand on the knob like it was the only thing holding her up. He stepped inside. You think I don't know what people are saying? You think I haven't heard it all? They think I used you. They think you fell apart. They think it's some pathetic midlife thing for you, or some power fantasy for me. But they don't know anything. They don't know how it started. They don't know what you were like when you thought no one was watching. They don't know how hard you tried to stop it even when you didn't want to. She looked at him, eyes heavy, voice raw. You want me to stand in a room full of people and admit I gave everything up for someone who has barely started his life? No, he said. I want you to admit that for 1 second, you were alive again. She turned away from him. walked to the kitchen, opened a bottle of wine, poured it into a mug without asking. He didn't sit. He just stood there in the doorway. Finally, she said, "This doesn't end with us together. You know that, right?" He didn't flinch. "I know. Then why are you still here?" "Because I'd rather be the mistake you chose than the silence you kept." She closed her eyes. He left without another word. She sat alone for hours, finishing the wine in silence. No messages came. No one called. When the sun started to rise, she walked to the window, looked out over the street, and whispered something she didn't mean to say out loud. "I wasn't ready." But no one was there to hear it. 2 weeks passed without a message. She didn't call him. He didn't show up again. She went to work, sat in meetings, answered emails, signed off on projects she barely remembered reviewing, and no one asked her anything directly. They didn't have to. Conversations would pause when she walked into a room and pick up again when she walked out. Someone had removed his name from the project tracker without saying who did it or why. His desk near the glass wall sat empty. The chair pushed in, the monitor powered off, untouched. Her boss didn't mention the incident at the reception, but he did stop inviting her to client lunches, and the next big campaign was assigned to someone else. She didn't protest. She watched it happen quietly, like she was watching someone else's life dissolve. On Thursday, her assistant slipped a note onto her desk without comment. A folded sheet of paper, no envelope. She opened it only after the office emptied out for the day. "There's a goodbye box in the supply closet. I didn't throw anything away. Figured you might want it. M." She left the office at 7, walked to the supply closet, opened the door, and found a plain cardboard box on the floor. Inside were small things. A black notebook, a half-used pack of gum, the chipped mug with the Harry Potter art. She stared at the mug for a long time, then closed the box and carried it to her car. She drove aimlessly for nearly an hour. Thought about going home. Thought about calling her daughter. Thought about driving past his building just to see if his light was on. She did none of those things. Instead, she pulled over near the waterfront and sat in the car until the sky turned fully dark. The next morning, she stood in front of her closet and realized she didn't know what to wear. Not because of any meeting or event. There was nothing important scheduled, but because everything she owned looked like it belonged to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. She put on something simple. She didn't wear lipstick. Midday, she walked into the building next to the bookstore near campus. She hadn't been there before, but found the door easily. He was inside, sitting behind a desk, laptop open, talking to someone who looked like a classmate. He looked older than she remembered, not physically, but in how he carried himself. He saw her as soon as she walked in, but his expression didn't change. She waited until the other person left, then stepped forward. "I got the box." He nodded. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "I wasn't planning to come." "Then why did you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the shelves around him, the bulletin board covered in flyers, the stack of printer paper next to his laptop. He was working part-time at the university print office. It made sense. She finally said, "I'm not asking for anything." "Okay. I just needed to see you. To make sure you were okay." "I'm not," he said. She nodded once, slowly. "I'm not either." There was a silence between them that felt too careful. Not tense, just aware. He stood, closed the laptop, stepped around the desk, but didn't get too close. "Why'd you end it like that?" "I didn't know how else to end it." "You didn't say anything." "You didn't either." "I would have." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I didn't want to watch it fall apart in front of you." "You still think it wasn't real?" "I never said that." "You don't have to. You've already packed it into a box." She took a breath. "It wasn't steady. I lost more than I expected." "So did I." He sat down again. She didn't. "I still think about it," he said after a moment. "About you. About that night at your office. About the cabin. About the stupid elevator with the coffees. I can't be that person all the time. I never asked you to." "No. But it doesn't matter. They've already decided who I am." "Then why do you care what they think?" "Because I built a life that way. By caring. By holding it together." "And what did it cost you?" She looked at him. He looked back, waiting. "Everything," she said finally. "It cost everything." She walked toward the door. "I'm not going to see you again, am I?" She turned around. "I don't know. Would you want to? If we were different people. Maybe. We're not." "No." She opened the door. He called out, just as she stepped into the hallway. "I never stopped meaning it." She didn't turn back. She just nodded once, slowly, and kept walking. That night, She went home, left her shoes by the door, poured a glass of wine, and sat in silence. She thought about texting her daughter. She didn't. She thought about going to bed early. She didn't. She walked to the window, phone in hand, and stared at the screen without unlocking it. It buzzed once. A number she didn't recognize. You made the right choice. Doesn't mean it'll hurt less. She deleted it. The next day, she threw the mug away. The rest of the box, she left in her closet. She didn't cry. She didn't leave the city. She didn't chase anyone. She just went to work, sat in her office, and waited for something to feel normal again. It didn't. But she stayed anyway.